Full reactions to the 2023 Washington Commanders NFL draft class and some interesting players coming to Ashburn for rookie minicamp, NFL draft reactions, and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, so please subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you always get the latest episodes when they drop. I'm David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Commanders for Commander Country, part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation. You can find me there, here, or on Twitter at dharrison82, or you can text me anytime at 202-760-2644. I thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today and every day. And a special thank you to all the everydayers out here who were hanging out throughout the draft weekend leading up to the draft process. Now we've got picks to react to. And also a special thank you to the subtexters that were reacting in real time with me as the picks were going down. I was sitting in Ashburn, and you all were definitely helping make my weekend a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more engaging. So I appreciate that. Just over a dozen players, both undrafted free agents and some minicamp invites, are going to be headed to Ashburn for rookie minicamp in just a couple of weeks. Commanders draft grades are coming up and day 3 standouts from the NFL draft. But first, we're going to start where it all began, day 1 and day 2, and get our full class reactions in here. It all started with the selection of Mississippi State cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. Since then, Forbes has talked to us on Zoom, flew in overnight, talked to us in the team facility there in Ashburn, Virginia, and then he was at the draft event on Saturday to meet with fans and with media again. Initial impressions from talking to him, I can tell you he seems like a very solid man, very confident young man. I think that is the key. Knows who he is, knows what he wants to do, knows what he's here in Washington to achieve. Again, first-round pick, number 16 overall, played 35 games collegiately at Mississippi State, 150 tackles in those 3 years. So might be slight of frame, but still racked up a lot of tackles, especially for a defensive back. 14 interceptions, 20 passes defended on top of that, 6 touchdowns, 6 pick sixes, 6 touchdowns. That is an NCAA record for the most pick sixes in a collegiate career. Finished his career at Mississippi State with an 89.6 coverage grade in 2022, according to PFF's premium college stats. Look, play weight obviously is going to be a topic of conversation. He's slim. He is very, very slim. I saw a hashtag Slim Pickens kind of going around. I don't know if that could turn into an official nickname. It would certainly make a lot of sense, especially if he can become the ball hawk takeaway machine in the NFL that he was in college. But he is a slim guy. Like when you ask, people a lot of times want to say like, well, given your dimensions or your weight or your measurements, whatever, I expected you to be bigger, shorter, taller, whatever it is. I can tell you right now, he looks about as thin as you would expect him to be, but 150 tackles again, and the play weight, like he said, the Commanders obviously weren't too worried about it. Senior Director of Player Personnel Eric Stokes spoke to us on Saturday evening after the NFL draft concluded and said not only did he watch his standard 2 years of tape on Emmanuel Forbes, he actually went back and watched a third year of tape, and he said, I promise you guys, it does not and will not matter. He is not worried about the weights. Ron Rivera, Martin Mayhew are not worried about the weight. Emmanuel Forbes, certainly not worried about the weight. Also a player not worried about the weight, Fred Smoot, who came in, of course, as expected, and joined us for the Emmanuel Forbes introductory press conference in Ashburn. Was not on hand for the Zoom, but he was in the theater when Emmanuel came in and, did all the jersey holding photos and all that stuff. And Fred came in and as expected, we all kind of gravitated towards Fred and wanted to see his reaction, his opinion. If you've been paying attention to Fred Smoot leading up to the NFL draft, he's been a very big advocate of Emmanuel Forbes, very, not just because he's from Mississippi State, but also for his play style. And one of the things that he said to us, as far as, about the weight, he said, listen, lifestyle changes things. And, he's not going to be eating campus meals anymore. And he's not going to have a campus nutritionist telling him what he can and can't eat and all these other things. He's going to be a grown man playing a grown man game. And he used the phrase, stakes and weights will make up for all of that. And certainly Emmanuel Forbes going to have access to weights, and certainly first-round pick. He's got all the money in the world to eat some good steaks coming up. So Fred Smoot's not worried about it either, just for the record. Second-round pick number 47. You heard his name announced as Jartavius Martin. He does go by Quan. So that's what we will be calling him here. So I don't want to cause any confusion. Every dayers, you will be good. But Quan Martin, safety defensive back out of Illinois. He's going to be a nickel. I project 50 games in 5 seasons. Quan Martin played for in college, 148 tackles in that time frame, 10.5 for losses, 7 interceptions, 3 alone in 2022, 22 passes defensed, and 2 forced fumbles. Those forced fumbles coming again in 2022. And last season, he played 273 snaps in the slot. In contrast, Emmanuel Forbes played 21 snaps in the slot. So I think we know who the perimeter defender is, who the slot defender is. Quan Martin, he's coming in again, probably listed as safety once the official roster gets updated, but I expect him to fully be in the mix for that slot position as a defensive back. 26 catches allowed on 51 targets in the slot, 404 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions last season, gave up a 74.3 NFL quarterback rating when he was defending from the slot. So pretty good numbers there. Moving on to the last pick of day 2, 3rd round pick, number 97, offensive center, Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. If you haven't had an opportunity to catch his Zoom interview, I know the team's got the footage going out there. It's very solid. If you guys haven't seen it, let me know. And you want to see it, I'll throw it here on an episode this week. But 77.1 pass blocking grade from PFF's college stats. 0 sacks allowed in 2022. Only 7 total pressures also allowed in 2022. And he had an 83.7 run blocking grade as well, again, according to PFF. And when you look up the differentiation between whether or not he was better run blocking in zone scheme or gap scheme, a better zone blocker than gap blocker. And that's kind of what we expect a little bit from Eric Bieniemy, although his running back selection may differ there a little bit. So Ricky Stromberg rounding out day 2. Very solid picks. I think right off the bat, you kind of, before we do a huge deep dive, which we will continue to get deeper and deeper into these prospects as the week goes. But then you look at Emmanuel Forbes, potential to be a number 1, number 2 outside cornerback very early in his career. And if that weight isn't an issue, and that's kind of the big thing. I was talking to Scott Abraham for his program that'll be up on Monday there about that, and basically talked about how it's not an issue until it's an issue. You know what I mean? And I made the draw comparison to Devontae Smith out there in Philadelphia, and we saw what he did against the Washington Commanders secondary last year in that first game. Didn't do much in the second game, but in that first game, his size, his rail thinness certainly was not an issue. So Quan Martin, again, I fully expect him to be in the mix for that slot defender position. And Ricky Stromberg certainly expecting to come in and compete for snaps, compete for playing time, and at least compete to be positioning himself. We saw the injuries that that offensive line went through last year. If there's got to be some rotation going on, Ricky Stromberg certainly fighting for a spot to be, or to have a spot in that rotation. So we're going to turn the page next to day 3 and get some grades for the class from NFL.com Pro Football Focus. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're going to do that thanks to our friends over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and the calories, then you need to get the best tasting protein bar ever. Built, you got to try this. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. They taste so amazing, you're not going to think they're good for you, but they are. But while being covered in 100% real chocolate, they also come with 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 whopping grams of protein. Those are great macros in amazing flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. Plus, you can get them at Walmart. Drive down there, go to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, or the coconut puffs. Or if you've got a Sam's Club in your area, you can get a 13-bar box of hit flavors like brownie batter puff and churro puff. Of course, you can still go to built.com to get your specialty flavors. Make sure you head there. Walmart, Sam's Club, however you do it, make sure you get yourself some Built Bars. You got to try this. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view of the day. Every day is this week, all week long, even probably heading into next week. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the production, the stats, the measurables from these players, and we're also going to do a depth chart reset. I'm going to tell you where I think these guys truly plug in, and kind of how I kind of foresee the early part of the OTAs and training camp and all that stuff going for the Washington Commanders with the addition of these players. And of course, look, the next phase of free agency also comes into play. Are there going to be moves made? I got some questions. I got a couple of questions, actually. A couple of my subtexters kind of asked about the cap implications of of having these young guys join the roster. I'll be getting into all that stuff as well. Plenty of stuff to dive through as we get through the week here. I'm also trying to set up a couple of cool interviews for the show as well. That would be good if we can sync up schedules with people. Everybody's busy this time of year, but we'll see what we can do for everybody every day. Day 3, Washington Commanders picks. Did not have a bonus episode this weekend, but we did have some bonus footage. Locked On was doing these awesome interviews, and we were able to sit down and talk about some of these guys. But day 3 is really where we need to get caught up here on this program. 4th round pick, number 118, offensive lineman guard Braeden Daniels out of Utah. According to PFF, grading a 68.5 run block grade. Not great, but not terrible. But look, for a 4th round pick, 118, that's pretty solid. Again, he's better in zone than gap. So there seems to be a little bit of a trend here because, again, remember Ron Rivera in the pre-draft press conference was asked how much does the collegiate scheme and what the player did in college matter when you're transferring it to the National Football League. He said that he really likes to lean on that collegiate scheme. We know that Eric Bieniemy had a lot of input in the draft room. You get 2 offensive linemen that have a lot of zone blocking experience in the run game. I think you should probably expect a good amount of zone blocking here this next season. 79 overall pass blocking grade, so very good pass blocking grade. 0 sacks given up. Again, 7 pressures given up in 2022, just like Stromberg. And yes, I checked those numbers because those are the exact same numbers. They are the exact same numbers. No sacks, 7 pressures, according to PFF stat tracking. We head to the 5th round. Pick number 137, edge rusher KJ Henry out of Clemson. 85.8 pass rush grade in 2022. Created 48 quarterback pressures. Sacked the quarterback 5 times, 5 batted passes as well. We know how valuable that is for the Washington Commanders defense. 6th round pick, number 193, running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. out of Kentucky, a 90.8 overall offensive grade as a contributor, 90.7 rushing grade, 90.6 ball security grade, which I think is really important. He did have some fumble issues early on in his career, but he finishes the season or his career strong last season with a 90.6 ball security grade. 5.2 yards per carry in 2022, 6 rushing touchdowns, just 1 fumble. 7th round pick, number 233 edge Andre Jones Jr. out of Louisiana. Wanted to run to the store to grab a draft hat. Unfortunately, we had to get with Ron and get with Martin for the end of the day, so he had to put that off for just a minute. But a very excited young man. Very excited to get back with Percy Butler, his teammate back in college. Now they'll be joining forces again in the National Football League. He comes in with a 76.7 pass rush grade last season, 7 sacks, 32 total pressures, and 2 batted passes. So when we look here on the screen, for those of you on YouTube, the total draft class for the Washington Commanders, again, Emmanuel Forbes in the 1st round, another DB, Quan Martin in the 2nd. 2 linemen go back-to-back after that, Ricky Stromberg and Braeden Daniels. Edge rusher KJ Henry. We know that the depth of that position is going to be key. Now you actually have 2 defensive ends under contract for next year, KJ Henry and Shaka Toney, who is unfortunately suspended for the year, at least the year, due to violation of the NFL's gambling policy. And then you have running back, power back, short yardage guy, Chris Rodriguez Jr. out of Kentucky. And then you have edge rusher Andre Jones Jr. So Washington Commanders very deliberately adding some edge depth, adding some offensive line depth, adding to the defensive back room, and then adding themselves a running back. There have been questions already about what the addition of the 2 edge rushers means. It could mean a few things. Again, we'll get deeper into that conversation as we get into kind of the salary cap implications. But for the rest of this segment, we're actually going to get into grades. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm not grading the draft because I'm not a fan of grading drafts. I'm not really a fan of grading a whole lot. We will do them from time to time just because they are kind of a conversation mechanism. But drafting or grading draft classes to me is a futile thing, because really what you're doing when you're grading drafts is you're saying, here's how much they agreed with me, right? And I think we try to make it clear here, and most people who have good sense will make it clear that the way that I see the team, the way that other media members see the team, the way that fans see the team, doesn't necessarily jive with the way that the team sees the team, right? Like, we all basically had corners going in the 1st round, but most of us were kind of targeting slot corners, right? Joey Porter Jr. was the most popular pick. He's a perimeter guy, but also a much more of a man guy versus a zone guy. So some of us didn't prefer that kind of a guy. Some people did prefer that kind of guy. Most of us who didn't look at Joey Porter Jr., who were the other options? There were slot guys, right? And that's one of the reasons that Christian Gonzalez was such a popular projection as pick 16 was coming up on the clock during the real draft. So I don't like doing grades because basically what I'm saying is here's how mad I am that they didn't agree with me. And that, to me, that's not a fair way of evaluating something. I like to do grades 3 years down the line. So maybe we'll go through 3 years back and look at that draft class here later in the next couple weeks, and we'll grade that draft. I think that's perfectly fair. But as far as grading this draft, I'll leave that in the hands of guys like Chad Reuter over at NFL.com, who does give the Washington Commanders 2023 NFL draft class a B overall grade. He gave them a B on day 1, a B on day 2, and an A minus in day 3 to give them an overall grade of B. I don't know, 2 B's and an A minus. I think that probably averages out to like a B plus, really. But now we're just splitting hairs. Reuter writes, quote, if the ball finds Forbes in the NFL like it did in college, his lean frame won't be a concern. They eschewed other needs to bolster the secondary again with the nickel or with nickelback safety Martin, and then grabbed the solid Stromberg a bit earlier than I expected him to go, as centers were quickly coming off the board. Daniels will excel if he plays guard in the NFL. Henry's combination of strength and agility on the edge make him a good find in the 5th round, and Jones has potential on the outside. The Commanders chose not to select a tight end, but Rodriguez does meet their need for a thumper in the backfield. Looking at PFF's grade, PFF gave the Washington Commanders an overall draft grade again of B, and they point out that they actually have Quan Martin as a reach. They said that he comes off at the 47th overall pick. PFF had him as the 94th player on their big board, so calling that a reach. And then they say the biggest reach on day 2 came with the selection of Stromberg, who was their 288th ranked player, yet selected obviously much, much earlier than that. But they also go on to say that Stromberg could be a starter in the National Football League. So I don't know if you have 288 graded starters in this year's NFL draft. If there are 288 starters in this year's NFL draft, then the NFL just got a huge influx of talent. Speaking of influxes of talent, however, some undrafted free agents, some minicamp invites coming to Ashburn here in a couple weeks. Washington Commanders rookie minicamp kicking off on May 12th. I will be there to cover that for all of you as well. And so we've got a couple of weeks here between that, but that gives us more time to kind of react deeper into this year's class. But we're going to talk about those undrafted free agents, the minicamp invites, going over the names and some interesting notes on those players. That's coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Welcome back to this episode of Locked On Commanders, wrapping up our holistic reaction to the 2023 NFL draft class for the Washington Commanders. Again, moving forward, we get deeper into these players, deeper into the depth chart ramifications, and we'll also talk about the money and how the salary cap stuff is going to work, and if there are any correlating moves that are possibly about to happen for the Washington Commanders as we move forward. But first, there are some more players, rookies, joining the Washington Commanders in their rookie minicamp coming up again beginning May 12th. It'll run through that entire weekend. The media will only be there, however, for May 12th, the first day of the minicamp. So I will be there for that. We will have that conversation and discussion when that time comes. Joining those players, joining the drafted players, that is, quarterback Chase Bryce out of Appalachian State. He's a minicamp invite, so not an official undrafted free agent signee, but he has been invited to the minicamp. There's, I think, there's 1 or 2 other minicamps he was also invited to. He is going to participate in one this weekend as well, and then he'll participate in Washington's next weekend. Threw for nearly 10,000 yards passing in 5 years of collegiate football play, 73 touchdown passes. Also played for Clemson for 2 seasons, played for Duke for a season before ending up in App State. 27 passing touchdowns in each of his past 2 seasons. Did turn 25 in January, so a little bit older than most prospects, but he also has a very strong program pedigree coming from Clemson, coming from Duke, and having some levels of success at each, although obviously he didn't stay at any of them for the long haul. Offensive lineman Mason Brooks coming out of Ole Miss. He was Dane Brugler's number 38th ranked offensive lineman in the draft, a Western Kentucky transfer from 2022, and Ole Miss's top graded pass blocker in 2022, according to PFF. Now, granted, Brooks only played 43 pass blocking snaps, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. Air Force running back Brad Roberts is also a minicamp invite, played fullback for the Air Force, is listed as a running back. However, 11 100-yard rushing games in 2022 and 17 touchdown runs in 2022 as well. Another powerful type of between the guards, really, type of runner there. Coming in for rookie minicamp. Stanford wide receiver Bryson Tremaine He's interesting because quarterback coach, Washington Commanders' new quarterback coach, Tavita Pritchard on the staff. You have to imagine that there was some buy-in there from Tavita Pritchard, Coach Pritchard, in order for Bryson to come into camp. 6'4", ran a 4.57, which to me, 4.57, it's slow, but it's not like super slow if you're 6'4" as well, right? So that could be something interesting to watch. Mitchell Tinsley out of Penn State. I know a lot of people are excited about him. 6 foot tall. Penn State's second leading receiver last year. However, he did lead the team in touchdowns with 4 and receptions with 51. Had a 60% contested catch rate last season for Penn State. Kaz Allen out of UCLA, only 5'8", but he had 39 kick returns in 2021 and 2022, over 1,000 return yards, did have a touchdown, was a running back for 4 years before converting to wide receiver in 2022. I feel like you could basically see an Antonio Gibson, Curtis Samuel type of deal kind of happening there, where he is a wide receiver, but he does a lot of that kind of end around screen game type of stuff, and then maybe makes an impact in the return game. And again, these are all minicamp invites, undrafted guys. So whatever I say here, take with that grain of salt and seasoning that these are UDFAs and train and minicamp invitees. So, when I say could be involved in the kick return game, I'm not projecting that he's just going to be your starting kick returner, your number one kick returner as a rookie. So just put things in perspective a little bit. But that's who these guys kind of are. And if they do have a successful NFL career, this is where they're going to probably make their impact. Another tall receiver coming in, Jalen Sample out of Minnesota State, Mankato, 6'3", 4.65", 40. Zion Bolins, another receiver out of Hawaii, coming in 5'11", ran a 4.52. It's a bit slower than you want at that size, but he is a big play guy. 7 catches of 20 yards or more in 9 games in 2022. All 4 of his touchdowns in 2022 were on plays of 20 yards or more. So big play potential certainly there. Probably plays a little bit faster than the 4.52 speed. Defensive end Joshua Pryor out of Bowie State. Bowie State coming in. He's a plus run defender. Has some position versatility. Cornerback Nick Whiteside, the second out of Saginaw Valley State. 2 interceptions in 11 games in 2022. DB Mike Sawyer Jr. out of Concord comes in with 10 passes broken up in 10 games last year from the Baltimore, Maryland area. Cornerback Wesley McCormick out of West Virginia, 5'10", ran a 4.56 40, 2 passes defensed in 2022. Spent 5 years at James Madison, including the COVID year, before heading to West Virginia last season. Safety Xavier Henderson out of Michigan State, a 4-year starter, a 2-time team captain, 40 starts at safety, so plenty of experience and leadership. Safety Kendall Smith out of Illinois was a wide receiver commit back in 2017, converted to safety. Those ball skills have not left him. 5 interceptions in 2022 and a 2022 All Big Ten selection. So some interesting names, some interesting data points there from this rookie, undrafted free agent class and minicamp invite class. And something that's really stood out to me throughout this entire draft weekend, guys, is academic All-Americans, or All-American, academic All-Americans, all conference honor rolls, whatever you want to call it. They got some smart dudes coming in for this rookie class. I will tell you that. Definitely prioritizing leadership, community. KJ Henry is a community hero just as much as he was a hero on the field for Clemson. So definitely aiming at high fiber, high moral fabric type of guys here, and guys that know how to get the important stuff done. Just like you guys coming through, I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view every single day from my everydayers. Again, we will continue this week diving deeper into this class, our next deep dive into this class. I'm going to watch some film. I'm going to look at some things, see what I can pick apart for you. And we're going to talk about the cornerbacks, and we're going to take their first 2 picks. I'm going to look at both of them. I'm going to watch multiple games on both of them, come back with my notes, and then I'm going to reset the depth chart and tell you where I think this thing is going moving forward for the cornerback room. And of course, any other news that may or may not be coming down the pipe, we will react to that as well. In the meantime, we're not going to do a mailbag this week. I want to give you guys time to kind of let everything really settle in. But if you already have questions about this draft class, about the future, whatever it is, send them into the email, lockedoncommanders@gmail.com. Hit me on Twitter @dharrison82. Drop them in the YouTube comments or text me anytime with questions, comments, show ideas, smoker recipes, whatever you got. 202-760-2644 via Subtext. And we will get to those next week. We will have another live mailbag episode next Tuesday. So go ahead and get them in now. But if you need to wait till next Tuesday, you've got some time. Signing off for today, I'm David Harrison, staff writer for Commander Country of Sports Illustrated's FanNation, credentialed member of the media covering your Washington Commanders. More importantly, hanging out with you 5 days a week. Till we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you right here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.